Testing. Welcome to the Hitched Podcast. And in this episode, we're interviewing one of my favorite people in the wedding industry. She's got lots of experience. She's really knowledgeable. She's very funny.
Excuse me, I thought I was writing this introduction.
Oh, you're hosting this one.
Yes, actually, I'm Maisie Peppitt, and I'll be your host of today's podcast because now we're going to put editor of Hitched, Zoe Burke, in the hot seat. So, Zoe, are you ready to get hitched?
I guess I am, yeah.
So, as you know, today we have Zoe Burke on the podcast. Now, many of you will know her as one of TikTok's favourite wedding planners, but I know her as the editor of Hitched, which is obviously where we work. So you've probably read many of her tips and tricks online for planning the perfect celebration. She's also an expert, though, on wedding planning. So today we're going to learn all of your secrets.
No pressure.
Zoe, it's wonderful to have you here today. How does it feel to be in the hot seat?
I must admit, I prefer being on the other side, I think, but go easy on me.
Why don't we start at the beginning? How did you get into weddings?
Okay, so I was never that, as an 18-year-old, didn't really think much about weddings, as you do. I did a degree in journalism and I applied for every single job you could think of. And I, as a 21-year-old leaving uni, was in the running for 2 jobs. Social media coordinator at Southampton Airport and intern at Hitched.
Quite different.
And, I was giving it my all to both of them. Like, this is my passion. I love airports and I am obsessed with weddings, but in my head I was thinking whatever I get is going to be a stepping stone to when I go work for Cosmo or Stylist or something like that. And I didn't get the Southampton Airport job, which is their loss, and I got the job at Hitched. And I remember walking into that office. It was on an industrial estate in Camberley, carpet tiles, neon lighting. Like, it was not glamorous. We've all seen like Devil Wears Prada, all that kind of thing, 13 going on 30. I was expecting, this amazing, illustrious, bustling office, and it was not that. And it was a place where people argued over who'd park their car where quite a lot and whose turn it was to make the tea. And I remember thinking, this will be me for a year. This will be my stepping stone. And it's been 13 years now, and I have never left the world of weddings. I just love it. It hooked me in. The whole thing, the industry, the small businesses that make it up, often female-owned businesses, the people who are choosing to take time out of their lives to celebrate love and bring everyone together to celebrate that love. I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
That's really special. I can't think of a better reason to have a job, to be honest, than, everything you just said. So I feel like planning weddings must be a very, very lovely, sparkly, nice kind of job. There's so many perks I can think of. But what are some of the biggest challenges being a sort of wedding expert?
Oh, gosh, that's a tough question. I think I am perpetually afraid of offending people. I am very anxious and I worry about what I say all the time. And obviously I have opinions. Everybody has opinions on things, and weddings can be quite polarizing. And sometimes I can maybe voice my opinion before I've really thought about how it will land. And I have to be careful to do that. And probably the other time was the time that I dressed up as Boris Johnson for a social media thing and I got in trouble, and that was quite challenging, but we don't like to talk about that.
Why were you dressed up as Boris Johnson?
It's a very long story to do with COVID and weddings.
Right.
And I think the worst thing of that was somebody said to me afterwards, but I liked your wig, and I wasn't wearing a wig, it was my own hair. So that was
Ouch.
a dark time.
Okay, so when you are giving wedding advice, because obviously you don't just do that through the app and the platform Hitch, which we work for and use every day, you also do that on TikTok, and you've developed a bit of a following actually on TikTok for people that come to you for wedding advice. What is the most common question people ask you?
Oh gosh, probably when do I send my save the dates? That is a question I think I get asked at least once a day, every day. And it's not just on TikTok, it's been throughout my whole career, because people are really nervous of getting it wrong, I think. But I would always say to people, there's no right or wrong in weddings, and you have to do what works for you. And the rule of thumb used to be you'd send your save the dates a year in advance, right? But actually we're all so busy now. People, trying to book in just a brunch date with my friends, we have to check our diaries 5 months in advance, So for weddings now, I think we need to give people more time, but people don't want to be seen as doing the wrong thing. But especially if you're getting married abroad or peak season or whatever, I would always say, allow more time. Maybe do 2 years, 18 months in advance, you know? And you don't have to go to the effort of like writing them out and posting them, like just letting key people know your date That's saving the date.
Okay, I love it. This might be a bit more of a tricky question, so edge carefully. But what is the one thing, because you can book a lot of things through Hitched. It's great for that reason. It has literally every vendor under the sun on it, whatever you're looking for. What is the one thing that you think is an unnecessary splurge when planning a wedding?
Okay, you're going to think this is a cop-out. I don't think that there is anything that is an unnecessary splurge if you love it. I think if you are spending a lot of money on something because you think you should, because you've seen it at other weddings, because it's the done thing, that's a waste of money. But if it's because you absolutely love it, then it's not a waste of money. You know, if everything at your wedding should like literally make your heart sing, like you should be so excited to see it on the day, you should be so excited to reveal it to your guests. If you don't feel like that about it, don't do it.
Well, speaking of advice to couples planning weddings, should we move on to some listener questions?
Okay.
So this is a question from a bride-to-be.
Okay.
So she says, "Hi Zoe, I'm in a bit of a dilemma and could really use some advice. I'm 28, engaged, and we've already booked our coordinator and reception for the big day. The thing is, ever since I got into this relationship, I've been overworked as the sole provider. I've been working tirelessly to sustain our lifestyle, and I'm afraid that if I stop, we won't be able to achieve our dream wedding. Our wedding budget is supposed to be 50-50, but I cover most of the expenses. Now I'm at a point where I'm questioning whether I should go through with this wedding this year or put it on hold. I want to take a break, travel, and find myself, but this wedding's holding me back. Any advice on how to navigate the situation? Should I even get married?"
Oh, this is big.
Big
this
question.
is not just a wedding issue. I think this is like a relationship issue. In that, if you are the sole provider, but your wedding is 50-50, I mean, I don't know where that other proportion is coming from. And I think weddings really and wedding planning has to be about communication. So I think that this bride-to-be needs to sit down with her partner and say, this is how I'm feeling and this is where I'm at. And quite often as well, and I'm not saying that's the case here, but when I speak to couples planning their wedding, they say, it's our dream wedding, but then they'll also say, I'm doing all the planning. And I think, oh, is it our dream? Like, is it that her partner's not contributing because it's not their dream wedding necessarily? So I think they need to sit down and really talk about how they're feeling, what they're spending, and what their priorities are. Because if both of them agree that they want to have a really big wedding, but they're struggling to afford it, maybe the sensible thing is to put it back and give themselves more time to save. But if they're not both on that same page, then they need to think about what's next and what the dream wedding actually looks like for them.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. I'm going to flip the question for you a bit.
Okay.
What happens if one person in the relationship wants a big wedding, the other person really doesn't? Is it then fair for the person who wants the bigger wedding to spend more on it?
I think it's fair for them to spend more if they want more and they can afford to do it. But I think that also, if you are at odds with what you want, you have to compromise, because you can't bring somebody who really doesn't want a big wedding through a big wedding, because it is a lot. It's a big day. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of expectation. There's a lot of eyes on you. And it's about celebrating your love and your relationship more than anything else. And you can have a big party with a small crowd because it's the atmosphere that you create. It's not necessarily the size of the venue or what you bring in. It's the people and the vibe that make the wedding. So I think you need to discuss your priorities and find a way to compromise to plan a wedding that works for both of you.
Yeah, that is so true. Okay, I think we have time for one more question as well. So question 2 is more about guest lists and the everlasting question of plus ones. So this listener says, I come from a large family and a very large friend group. My fiance has a small family and a close-knit friend group. Currently, she has about 20 on the list in total and I have about 60. Even with this amount, I still have a lot of close cousins and friends I can't invite. It's tough enough that I have to invite some and not others, but how can I gently let people know that they didn't make the cut?
Oh, this is so tough, isn't it? And this is why I'm not a fan of that like no ring, no bring rule that they have in America. But yeah. I do see where you have to have kind of a cutoff, especially when guest lists are limited and budgets are tight. I think the key in this situation is always to be upfront. Let people know, because most people, particularly when you're getting married, your friendship group tend to be around the same age and they're probably going through the same thing or have gone through the same thing in that they're planning a wedding or have got married recently. So they know what it costs. They know how it works. And I think that's the real shift in when you are a bit older and you're getting married, is that people don't automatically assume they're invited because they know how much every invitation costs. So you need to be upfront with people, I think, because the hurt comes from when people were expecting to be invited and they weren't. So if you can say to your friends, I'm really sorry, our capacity is really limited or our budget is really tight and we would love to have you there, but we can't afford to. I'm really sorry, or we can't make the cut because we have to, have this many people in our family there, People will be understanding as long as you've explained it to them. It's the surprise, I think, that hurts people.
Okay.
So that it's important to set that expectation and manage the expectation and let them know where you're coming from. I would also say, I love the idea as well, if you can't have people at your wedding. And I think this a lot with colleagues as well, because people often don't know whether to invite their colleagues or not.
Everyone always says, I'm so excited for your wedding if you ever get married. And it's really assumed. And that's so nerve-wracking.
Really awkward, yeah. And you have a lot of avoiding people in the kitchen at work, yes. And thankfully, one of the good things about the pandemic, I guess, is it's kind of taken that away. We don't know our colleagues well enough anymore, But you can arrange a separate event. So one of the things that I often suggest to people is, why don't you say, we'll have a champagne and cake celebration on a different date? And it might be after you've got back from honeymoon or whatever, and you just meet in the pub, get a few bottles in and get some cake and toast the wedding there. And that way you're still celebrating with them. You can show photos, you can watch speech videos if you want to, etc. They're still being involved in the celebration, but you've managed to make them feel included, make them feel recognised, but keep them out of your wedding.
I think that's a really nice idea, a really good alternative.
And any excuse for more champagne and cake, right?
God, yeah, definitely. Okay, so that was Wedding Dilemmas with Zoe Burke. So moving on, we're going to be talking about wedding planning tips, tricks and trends for 2025. So I think you'd say so yourself, you've got your finger on the pulse of wedding trends for 2025.
Well,
more or less.
Say, yeah. I do this little thing called the Hitched Wedding Trend Report.
I see the bows, don't worry, we see you. So we want you to spill the tea on wedding trends for the next year. So off the top of your head, tell me 3 instant trends that you think we're going to see everywhere in 2025 during weddings.
Okay, number 1, the content creator. Now, we've talked about this a lot, I know, but content creators are everywhere right now. They are up 586% search.
What is a content creator?
So a content creator, it's not like a photographer or videographer, that's a separate thing, but it's somebody who comes to your wedding and mainly they'll probably use a smartphone to capture content. And they're not doing the set shots that your photographer might be doing with you. They're not doing beautifully edited, soundtracked video like your videographer might be doing. They're capturing those little moments between you and guests, little bits that you might not have seen yourself. And then the next day, which is again different to a photographer and videographer because they take time to edit and polish things, they will just send you a file of photos and clips. And some content creators will work with you as well to maybe there's a TikTok trend you want to do, but you're not that familiar with editing videos together or whatever, and they might help you do a few of those, some different transitions and things.
Oh, so it's mainly for social media?
Yeah, okay. Predominantly for social media, yeah. And it means you don't have to be on your phone all day. You don't have to be saying to your guests, remember to get a picture of that, remember to get a picture of that, so you can post it the next day. Because let's face it, everyone does want to post about their wedding the next day, right?
Yeah, you don't have to be an influencer, right? This is something that everyone can get.
Everyone's waiting for the content, yeah. And so you'll have some stuff different to your professional photos, a little bit more guest eye view, I guess, and you'll have stuff to post the next day. And people are loving this.
I like it. I think I could be a content creator. I'd quite enjoy that.
I don't think it's in your contract.
Freelance
You're not allowed to.
We'll see about that. All right, so number 2, after content creators, what are you thinking?
Colourful wedding flowers are everywhere because I think for a really long time in weddings, we've had a lot of neutrals. We've been very tasteful. We've been very timeless. We've been very beige. And what I see in weddings, because, I've been doing this for longer than I care to remember, is trends rotate and whatever comes in next is usually not backlash, but the opposite of what came before. So, for example, lace wedding dresses were all the thing when I started out. Everyone loved lace. It was the Kate Middleton effect. People wanted lace. And I, at one point, remember thinking, I'm never going to see a wedding dress ever again that's not lace. And then suddenly Meghan Markle's on the scene in her very chic, very simple dress. And that was everywhere then. And then I found myself recently thinking, oh, I miss lace. And it's coming back again. And that's the thing, they rotate. So when you see something for a long time, then you get a new cohort of couples in who are like, I don't want to be like that, I want to be different. And we're seeing that now with colourful flowers. People are fighting back against pale pink peonies and really white roses and things like that. They're going for really clashing colours and statement flowers, and they're having a lot more fun, I think, with their florals. And I really like it.
I like that too. Okay, before we talk about more trends and anti-trends, what do you think's going to be number 3?
Number 3, I think mini wedding dress. It's everywhere. We are seeing celebrities and us normal folk alike going for mini dress moments, and I love it. It's very like chic townhouse wedding, but it's also fun party vibes, and I think it's a lot more freeing than a long traditional wedding dress. It's a lot more playful. It doesn't take itself quite as seriously, and I think also, particularly my generation, we get a bad rap sometimes for not wanting to be adults, you know, like adulting is hard and all that sort of thing, and I'm not the type of person to say that, but I do get why people might feel like they're not quite grown up enough to wear a wedding dress, because you know what, none of us have got like mortgages and things, and we're all living in this perpetual student life. And I think actually it's a great way to be weddingy without being overly weddingy.
Or out of your comfort zone. Yeah. I mean, when else are you going to put on a massive gown if you want to feel yourself still on your wedding day?
Yeah, and for some people they love it and it's the moment they've been waiting for. But I know myself and my friends, it can have that like plain dress up vibe, and I think it's a way to kind of channel it but still be a little bit more, I don't want to say immature.
No, I love that. I'm a big fan of the short wedding dress. Youthful. Very chic, very chic. Okay, so on the topic of trends, what is a wedding trend that you hope never resurfaces, at least in our lifetimes?
Do you know what? It's quite a recent trend, but I hate it. It's when people like push the cake in their partner's face.
Yeah.
And that did a big thing on TikTok recently, and it makes me feel really uncomfortable and I don't like it.
I've never seen that in much positive light. It's always like everyone in the comments is like, that's toxic.
It's
that's
not funny.
A red flag, right?
Yeah, it's not funny.
No.
And I've never seen anyone enjoy it. Yeah, I don't like that. So I'm hoping that dies out. Feed them some cake nicely, sure. Yeah. But
no, also
imagine it in someone's face.
Furious. I've just done all my hair and makeup and you're going to ruin it. No way.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. I'd be fuming. Okay, so that's definitely one of them. And what about moving on to tips and tricks? In your career so far as a wedding expert, what are some of the best wedding planning tips that you've learned?
So the thing that I would always say couples need to do is prioritize. And I would also say alongside that, don't feel beholden to traditions that don't reflect you. For example, people will say, oh, I'm really nervous about getting married. I don't want to walk down the aisle. I don't want everyone looking at me. Don't do it. Absolutely don't do it. Already be in the room when people arrive, or walk in with your partner, ask if you can flip the room and come in through a different door. Like, you can do what you want. I remember being really surprised a while ago about how many people said they were dreading their first dance. And I just thought, well, don't do one. You don't have to do one, you know? And I think sometimes people don't realise. They think, oh, well, I've got to. No, you don't. There's not like a wedding warden who goes around and ticks off and then at the end says, you did the first dance, you walked down the aisle, check, now you're married, right? Nobody does that. So you can do whatever you like. And I think it's really important that people remember that and make sure they build a day that's true to them. The other thing I would say about the priorities is sit down with your partner before you start to do anything and have a really frank conversation about what it won't feel like a wedding without. Mm-hmm. So whether, you know, you love a venue that's got fairground rides and you're like, I absolutely have to get married here. Like, it's been my goal since I was a child. Or I really cannot wear this and I want us to wear matching suits, or so, like whatever is your thing that you think it won't feel like the day I imagine without it. Mm-hmm. And hopefully you'll align. Sometimes you might have to make some compromises. Yeah. But I think it's really important that, especially when you're spending a lot of money, you spend it on the stuff that matters to you. So you're not paying out loads and loads and loads of money for something if neither of you are that bothered about it, because what's the point?
Yeah, totally. I mean, out of interest, what is one thing that couples are starting to decide, you know what, I don't think I need that in my wedding? Like, is there something that's quite traditional that's being cut off more and more?
Yeah, do you know what? The bouquet toss.
Really?
Only 1 in 10 couples did a bouquet toss last year. And I can see why, because you know what? You spend all that money on your flowers. They're gorgeous. There's so much stuff you can do with your flowers now as well. Like, you can preserve them, you can dry them out, you can have them framed, you can set them in resin, like so many things you can do. And also fake flowers are amazing now as well. They look so realistic. So you can keep them forever. Why would you spend all that money on gorgeous flowers and then lob them into a crowd?
That's actually so true.
not worth it. And it's also embarrassing for the people who it gets lobbed to. I've been in crowds where they've been like, go on. Absolutely not. Yeah.
Also, when has it ever been caught? I've never seen anyone actually successfully catch one.
I have seen someone catch it, yeah, but I just don't. I think putting your single friends in the pool of pity and throwing a bucket. No, let's not do that.
They already have to do the hen do. Let's not subject this to this as well.
Yeah, let's not do that.
Zoe, it's time for you to play Hitched or Ditched.
Oh no.
Are you ready?
I am ready,
Okay.
I think.
Here are your paddles, your hitched and ditched paddles.
Thank you.
And this time, as you are the wedding expert, we're going to talk about traditions.
Okay.
So I'm going to read out classic wedding traditions, and you're going to say hitched if you like it and ditched if you don't, and we should never do it again.
I invented this game. It's all right.
Just in case we need a light refresher. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. The first one, let's get started. Fathers walking their daughters down the aisle.
Oh, I'm going to say ditch.
Controversial.
It is, but I'm going to add a caveat.
Okay.
That if you and your father both want to do it, it's absolutely fine and you should do it. And in that case, hitched. But if you don't want to do it, you shouldn't feel any kind of awkwardness around that. And I think the tradition behind being given away is one of those wedding traditions that we like to brush under the carpet and say, oh, well, you know, and it has changed and it can be a nice moment with your dad now and it's lovely. But also I think there's lots of ways to do it differently. And for example, my best friend got married in the summer and walked down the aisle with both her parents because she wanted to recognise both their involvements in her life. And I've also seen people walk down with their partner and they do the walk together. And I think that's a nice way to put a spin on it. So I'm ditching the idea of only walking down the aisle with your dad and saying you can walk down with whoever you want.
I like that. And actually, I went to a wedding a few weeks ago and the bride walked down by herself.
Yes.
And I just thought, slay, go for it. Yeah,
same. Like Meghan Markle did it too.
It's like, I don't need anyone.
Slay.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that. I agree. So next up, something borrowed.
Yeah, hitched. We can keep this. I like this one. I think it's quite nice to be able to share stuff with people and, you know, let them have a little bit of your own kind of luck and love in their wedding. Yeah, something borrowed can stay.
The next tradition to be hitched or ditched is the newlywed wearing white.
Oh gosh, these are really tough. I'm going to say ditched because ironically, I know I'm like a snowman right now, but I personally wouldn't wear white because I think if you're a very pale girl like myself, white is not always your friend. And I mean, I've seen lots of people look amazing in white, but I also think that, again, it's one of those traditions. People think they have to do it because everyone does it. And so I'm ditching the concept and saying you can wear whatever colour and whatever style of dress you like on your wedding day, or not a dress if you don't want to wear a dress, you know? And let's not be beholden to traditions that don't always work for us.
I love that. And there are so many like beautiful non-white dresses. I always love Rachel McAdams and About Time, the red one.
Iconic, yes. So like hitched if you love it and you want to do it, but for me it's a ditched.
Perfect. Okay, right, moving on. What about veils? Love them or hate them?
Oh gosh, I'm going to say hitched on veils because I don't like it when they go over your face because it reminds me of the scene in The Others, you know? Well, yeah. But
no, I always think of Shrek with Fiona when she like lifts it. That's what I think of.
We're from different generations. But I think as an accessory, they can be really cute and like personalized veils, like ones that have lovely bows attached to them. Now that they've become more of a fashion statement, I'm very much hitched. But when they were like to conceal the face so no one could back out, ditched.
Okay. Do you actually know the history? Because I actually don't know why we have veils. Can you tell me?
Oh my goodness. So way back when, before you knew who you were going to get married to, when your marriages were like organised for reasons to keep your family farm within your family or whatever, the bride would turn up with the veil on. So they wouldn't know until the deed was done, the vows were said, you lift it off, and then that's what you got.
Oh my God, like a lucky dip. That's crazy.
Like a lucky dip, yeah. And again, it's one of those things that just kind of don't really put women in the best position in the wedding. So I think it's nice to have them as like to repurpose them and reinvent them as an accessory is fine. This is like a wedding history lesson, I'm sorry.
No, I love it.
Yeah, I do think that when they go over the face, it's not for me, it's a ditched.
I agree. Let's use them as a fashion accessory.
Yeah, let's reclaim them.
Yeah, definitely. How about catching the bouquet?
Well, you know my feelings on this one. This is a ditched. We don't even have to go into it again, but we're not putting single people in the pool of pity, are we? No.
No, well and firmly ditched. Okay. So back onto fashion. What about wearing something blue?
Yeah, I'm going to say hitched. I think that's fun. It's unusual. I like it. And I also really like it when people have like someone in their wedding party be their something blue. I'm one of my friends, something's blue. All her bridesmaids are blue, so we are her something blue.
That's lovely.
Yeah, and I like that. I think that's, again, it's a fun, we're reinventing traditions, we're making them fun. I think that's really nice.
That is really nice. I like that idea. Okay, so this is quite an interesting one. What about the couple spending the night before apart?
Oh, ditched.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because... Well, I mean, do it if you want to. This sounds so weak. Do what you want. But just because I think it doesn't mean it's the rules. But I think that it's actually quite a nice idea to wake up with your partner on your wedding morning. It's like Christmas morning, isn't it? You wake up together and you can be like, oh, today's the day. I think it's really nice. I think more people are doing it. Again, do what works for you, because it's also nice to have a night with the girls or a night with the guys or whoever you're celebrating with the night before. But for me, it's a ditched.
I agree. I like that. Okay, so finally, and this is quite a big one.
Okay.
How do you feel on taking the other's surname?
Oh, this one is really hard for me. I have mixed feelings about this because surnames in general are quite patriarchal, and if they're not from your husband, they're usually from your dad, right? So it's a tricky one. And I think I'm going to say ditched, because I know that actually more and more couples are not taking the same name now, right? And it's falling out of favour a bit. But I think it's one of those, again, do what works for you. Take both names. Pretty much most of the people I know who have got married in the last year have double-barreled, or the man has taken the woman's name, which I think is really cool. So I think ditch the idea that a woman has to take a man's name and say hitch to the idea of doing what works for you. Blending your surnames, double-barreling, doing both, making a whole new surname. I know other people who've done that as well. Why not? Like, it's your name, do what you want with it.
I love that idea.
And I say that as someone whose last name is Burke, so you know.
Thanks for listening to the Hitched Podcast. Please don't forget to like, follow and subscribe. And for more wedding tips and tricks, go to hitch.co.uk.